That's sourdough Sam.
No, Sourdeath Sam.
Sourdeath Sam. Sourdeath Sam.
Sourdeath Sam.
Disrespect to Sourdeath Sam will not continue.
What's going on, everybody?
Yes, sir.
Feeling good. Feeling good today. And that's because the Niners looked better. 16-10 victory against the New Orleans Saints. It's preseason, which, you know, doesn't count for that much. But some promising stuff that we're seeing out of this rookie class. Obviously, you've got a lead with Dominic Pooney. Word on the street is, on KNBR, Kyle Shanahan already named him starting right guard. We like that. We like that. And I'll tell you why.
Sir.
First of all, very well could mean that Spencer Burford is our backup, which better than our starting guard. Second, it means that we are beginning to see positive results from a draft class. And I think the 49ers too often have had one all-pro gem in a sea of mediocre picks. And you're getting the feeling, obviously roster cuts are coming soon, so we're going to see who's practice squad or who is otherwise. But the beauty is we are going to start to see if these rookies are going to bear fruit like we hope they will. Promising performances as well on the offense, defense and offense. Jacob Cowing obviously being someone who stood out this game. Didn't get a chance to see him against the Titans. He showed up and certainly made a statement. I believe the wide receiver room is going to be a very, very interesting room to watch when it comes to roster cuts. So we'll see. But those boys are dogs.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So we're going to see what happens there. You know, I will say that there is one person more qualified than me to talk about this. I'm going to let him speak in a second. But first, I'm going to have David let everyone know that Sourdeath Sam is a gentleman on the streets and a freak in the spreadsheets. Well, I'm no David Lombardi, but I know a formula or two when I need it. So, like I said, I've got a friend who I would like to introduce everyone to. By the way, I haven't disclosed this to my YouTube friends, but this show is actually now on Spotify, iTunes, and Amazon Podcasts. I appreciate that. Yeah, so had some conversations with Tim Apple and the folks over there. They're really excited about this. So just an absolute pleasure to be on those platforms. So if you want to listen to me in the car, or if you need a valuable tool for ASMR, feel free to go ahead and subscribe and download my shows, and let me be a part of your sleeping patterns if you so dare. So as advertised, I got a friend. Well, first of all, I got Guy Haberman coming on very soon, who is an absolute legend. Promo codes, we don't have them on the show because I don't have sponsors. But what I will say is, aside from Guy, who I'm very excited to talk to, we do have someone I keep teasing. You know what? Let's just bring him in. Everybody, Kyle 5000. So, Kyle, obviously you've got a lot going on over there. First, do you have any updates on the Brandon Ayuk situation you'd like to share with us? Yeah, that's sort of what I thought. Okay, so let's talk about training camp. So, based on what you're hearing from your coordinators, what would you say is sort of the mission going into this last preseason game?
Going into the last preseason game, The mission is pretty straightforward. Evaluation and final decisions. We need to lock down those final roster spots, see who's stepping up under pressure, and solidify our depth chart. It's also about fine-tuning the schemes and making sure everyone's on the same page heading into the regular season. We've got to stay healthy, but we can't let up on intensity. It's the last chance for some guys to prove they belong, and we'll be watching closely.
All right, fair enough. And lastly, we have Guy Haberman coming on the show. Any words for him?
Yeah. Tell Guy I appreciate him bringing some actual football knowledge to the table. No fluff. No BS, just real talk. I respect the way he breaks down the game, and it's always good to have someone who gets the intricacies of what we're trying to do out there. Looking forward to the conversation, and maybe, just maybe, we can avoid talking about the same damn contract drama for a few minutes.
Nope. That ain't going to happen. And I'll tell you why. Because you know what we got next?
I figured as much.
Yeah, okay.
Well.
Yeah, we don't care. Look, what we got next is a segment that I'm really proud of, that I would like to talk about.
All right.
And Kyle, shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up.
All right. I get it.
He's real chatty today. I don't like that. Anyway, I would like to introduce my new segment called Ayuk Watch. Ain't shit happening, boys. Nothing new. Not a goddamn thing. Not a new thing to report. But I am wet, so that's cool.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
We have entered probably one of the more annoying contract disputes I've ever seen. And I think what's beginning to get annoying about it, because truthfully, I would say I'm normally quite a enthusiast for players getting what they want, players getting what they deserve. But I am going to say that it's beginning to feel like the 49ers are kind of getting played a little bit. How many times are we going to adjust this contract? It seems to be getting untenable. They need to wrap it up. We're I think 12 days away from the season starting. Does he even know what his shoulder pads feel like this year? It's driving me nuts, and it's driving us all nuts. We're national news all the time, and every time this damn report comes up, everyone's face is always the same, like, nothing new to report on this clown show. Yeah, it makes me feel a little annoyed, right? I mean, at least if you wanted 30 million and we're coming to the table with 30 million, this shouldn't take this long, right? This should be a night's worth of negotiations, hammering this out, getting this figured out so that it can be squashed, finito. Let's get him out there so that we can give him and Brock a few games of catch before the fucking season starts to count. I know it's been overblown. We've been talking about it a lot. I really don't want to belabor this point at all. But I just can't tell you how frustrating it is to be so allegedly so close and having details which appear to be able to get fixed in a relatively short time span. And yet, here we are, stuck in the same place we've been in, this purgatory, this Ayuk purgatory, for too damn long. And that's getting frustrating. What I will say is that there are some bright spots that we've been seeing again from this rookie class. That's been incredibly encouraging. It has been the sparkling water that cleanses the palate out of this sort of taste, this bad taste in our mouth. And I'm excited to bring in someone right now who I believe is going to be an excellent addition to this conversation. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Guy Haberman. In case you don't know, Guy is a play-by-play announcer for the Big Ten, formerly the Pac-12 play-by-play announcer. In addition, he's the host of the Guy Haberman podcast. So when you're done listening to his podcast on all of these wonderful networks, go ahead and follow me, but make sure you listen to him first, because he's where you're going to get all of the best information you can get on these podcast networks. So, Guy, I'm done gassing you up. How you doing? How you feeling?
Good. Appreciate Kyle's kind words too.
Oh yeah, no, he's kind of an asshole, but game recognizes game. I think he really sees something in you. So
I was like this close to asking him if he got a haircut the other day, and we just press conference ran out of time. I think the Shannon mullet just looked different live than he was dry in the press conference, and the game was wet.
Yeah, it had a little like oomph to it, a little je ne sais quoi of redneck party action.
Little Wink Martindale.
Yeah, exactly. Well put. So I'm glad to have you on. Honestly, you've been a guest that I've been hoping to get on for a while. I've been a huge fan of your podcast. Started listening in the Haberman Middlecoff era. Just out of curiosity, just for me and any viewers interested, sort of, what was your sort of journey getting into broadcast? Like, when did you know this is what I'm going to commit my life to?
Well, I started doing it in high school in Davis, California. The local community television, like public access. Somebody's dad was filming the games on Fridays and putting them on Wednesdays. So I called and asked if I could talk on the broadcast. Yeah. So that's where it started. And then I went to Fresno State and started doing it there. Volleyball on the radio, classic broadcasting route. A lot of softball, minor league baseball. Then moved up to the Bay Area in 2012 after doing like radio shows and college football, that sort of stuff in Fresno, and started working at 95.7, and then started doing Comcast and Pac-12 Network. Because all those, the three of them were in the same like two blocks. I would do radio, I'd go down to NBC, I could pop up to Pac-12 Network, all right there on 3rd Street down from the ballpark. During the end of the golden age of regional television.
Yeah. Well, and one follow-up to that, because obviously, this is a topic I'm interested in. I don't want to belabor it too long for the folks here for 49er stuff, but I'm very curious. At a young age, you were watching sports, and while most kids were fawning over the athletes scoring touchdowns, were you like, that Joe Buck has got something I want? Like, what was it?
I wanted to be the athlete too, just like everybody else.
Sure.
But you reach a point where you're not wanted anymore. But my dad was in the Air Force when we were really young. I was an Orioles fan, so I was listening to a lot of John Miller. And then we moved around, and then we moved out to California right before I started 9th grade, and John Miller was the Giants broadcaster. So I don't remember as a kid thinking that I knew that's what I wanted to do, but I just listened to the radio a lot. I was constantly watching games and looking at box scores and baseball cards, the whole, that whole cliche thing. So I don't remember it being like an obvious, yes, this is the thing. And my dad was like, you got to do something. You could get a job or in high school. He's like, you got to do something, pick something, do that. So that was what I did. And, I was sending tapes out, and that Johnny Doskow, who now does some A's, was the Rivercats AAA broadcaster in Sacramento. And he was the first person to listen to one of my tapes of, God, I'm sure it was terrible. I know it was terrible. But
that would be fun to resurface one of these days.
Oh, it's somewhere. It is definitely. I've got the tape somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah. In your retirement party 40 years from now, resurface that when you've got nothing left to lose, or just hand it to me on public access, and I'll pretend like I leaked it.
It's the hardest part is not having anyone. It just be myself. You know how it is. Like,
Yeah. Oh, totally.
it's
Totally.
yourself.
Totally. I unearthed some videos I made when I was in middle school that I thought were fire. I was like,
Yeah.
I don't know how this is not going to get me into the academy.
Yeah.
And I look back on it and I'm just like, there's a certain mentality that you need to embrace and acknowledge the cringe of knowing that you just weren't in your bag yet, and just accept it. Because when you look at your own work, even if it's from 20 years ago, you're like, that's still me and it sucks. But at a certain point, you have to look back retrospectively with a bit of separation to say, that was a different me.
Well, there's definitely a line where it's you trying to find you and then you. And all the different versions of you trying to find you are forgettable. It's like, how did anyone
Sure.
encourage me? Why did anybody tell me to keep going? Oh, it was so bad.
That's really funny. Well, I appreciate you sharing all that. Obviously, I'm a fanboy for broadcast, history. So
Yeah?
appreciate you.
That's
Yeah,
cool.
yeah. I mean, I actually had a chance to work with Joe Buck on a show that he was doing, and he is such a nice guy. I don't know if you've ever had a chance to meet him, but and just kind of getting to know him and his kind of getting through into the business with his dad, just loved it. So
Yeah, I've never met Joe, but it's funny. I was just talking today for college football. My statistician is actually a college student who goes to Arizona State named Jack. His dad, Ed, is Joe's statistician. So now Ed's son Jack is my football statistician. I was just talking to him today, and about other stuff, Ed, but he loves Joe. He says great things about Joe, and I've always enjoyed. I've always thought it was kind of. I'm guessing that was the HBO show that you worked on.
it was a show with DirecTV.
DirecTV, okay. I've always appreciated Joe. He's gotten some, I think, some pretty silly criticism over the years, when the reality is he's pretty damn good at what he does. He's really good.
Such a pro, and I'll end with this because I never thought I'd share the Joe Buck stories, but we're already here. The thing I always love about him is when he was leaving to say goodbye, he knew the names of people, like everybody, when he was leaving. People he 99.9% of talent on set would have no business even bothering to learn. And somehow, in his brain, he just registered and acknowledged everybody's name. And upon leaving, if he caught eyes with you, even if it was like slight glance, you got the goodbye. Total pro. Total
That's
good
cool.
guy.
Yeah, he was like Sourdeath. Appreciate you, man.
Sourdeath, I love you, buddy. You got a future in this fucking business.
Let me know when I can come on your show.
Yeah, hey, you know what? One of these days, if I get Joe Buck,
should
guess
get
what?
Joe.
He's such a nice guy. He might even say yes. Like from his hotel room, laptop open, just total pro. Just such a fun guy.
That's cool.
You know what's not fun though is all this fucking IU talk for months on months. I want to have this conversation with you from a different perspective, because obviously we understand that nothing has happened. My question to you is, looking at it from your perspective, at what point does it look like the 49ers have a lot of egg on their face? I understand if they offer a lower contract, someone wants to come in higher, they want to negotiate, that's fine. But to go from 26 to 28 to 30, now he's got the number he wanted, and they're still at a stalemate with details that probably could be hammered out in a night. Do you feel as though the Niners are kind of looking weak in this moment?
Well, I think to trade him would definitely have looked weak. It's hard to say. I mean, I think everybody is at fault here. He picked a team that he wanted to get traded to that was never going to give the 49ers really what they want, I don't think, unless something changes in the next few days. And it turns out not going to give him a number that was that much different than the 49ers number. We know the Patriots were willing to give him 32 and the Browns were going to give him 30. If he said, I want to go to the Browns, it's actually a better football situation. And the Niners Like, he'd be a Brown, but he didn't pick the Browns because the Niners would have done that deal. He picked a team that the Niners wouldn't do a deal with. I think when we'll be able to kind of write I want to say the final chapter is if they re-sign him and he plays, or he plays on the 5th year out, but if they re-sign him, if he starts the year only able to play 75% if they get a slow start to their offense because Brandon Ayuk's not ready to roll right away, that is ultimately, that's when there's egg. You know what I mean? Like, until then, they get him signed tomorrow and they beat the Jets week 1 on Monday night and he's got 7 catches and a touchdown, whatever, right? But until then, we're here to figure out all the different scenarios. To me, that's the scenario where it's bad, you know, where it's like you wasted it. There's only one bye. You don't have games to waste. They started so hot last year. And Bosa, Bosa didn't get the sack numbers. Bosa said yes, the whole thing affected him. Debo the year before said yes, the whole thing affected him. I don't know. You look at some of the advanced metrics, Bosa was still pretty damn good. But to me, that's where it's actually a problem. It's like if it actually affects your season. Yeah, and in Bosa's situation, he almost feels like such a statistical outlier because he was so dominant when he really had a full season of preparation, off season of preparation, hopped in, immediately was leaped into the conversation as one of the best, if not the best, at his position. And then even on an off year, it felt like he was still so dominant. Ayuk, I think, obviously an incredible receiver. It's why these conversations are being entertained instead of just kick rocks, we don't care anymore. Obviously, the 49ers value his skill set, but I don't know if he fits that category of such a statistical outlier, such an athletic freak that an entire offseason with no building chemistry with Purdy, with no getting his body properly conditioned. Maybe he is on the side, I don't know, but what we're looking at here, it seems like, is a rerun of a show that we have already seen, which is player holds out. And again, I think you hit it right on the head. In this particular case, I think there is blame to go around. The 49ers do have kind of a nasty history of letting this stuff drag out a little longer than they should. But then whenever this happens, the players come in and they're not performing at the level that they were the previous year that instigated the whole conversation and get this contract done to begin with. So it's mentally unhealthy to be in this, I mean, like, not to make light, but it's seriously, like, this is not the mindset an elite athlete wants to be in before they play games. It's just not. And I think that as much as anything is what for Bosa was in shape. Like, it's the other stuff of it gets acrimonious. You've got to clear the air. You got to come together. The second you sign that contract, all that stuff doesn't just go away. Like, thanks for the money. Oh, that stuff I said to you guys and that stuff you guys said about me, like, right, we're good. Forget it ever happened. It was all just part of the game, baby. Like, no, it doesn't. That's not how humans work. So that's the part that, like, is he going to be as good of a player? Not, I mean, he's plenty young. It's not about that, but and let's not pretend. I don't think anybody is pretending that, like, teams are just 80 people and support staff and everybody gets along. And if you don't get along, then it's a problem and blah, 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 blah. Like, not really. They don't, like, Kyle and Ayuk don't need to talk on a day-to-day basis. But I don't know. I mean, anyone who's worked in any environment where they had good relationships knows that there's a percent. I don't know what value to add to it, but people just feeling good is a thing. Yeah. Add to it the fact that McCaffrey's not on the field right now. Correct. Now, Christian will be fine when it gets going, blah, blah, blah. I mean, Christian loves reps, so they seem to matter to him. He takes a bunch of reps in minicamp. He takes reps in training camp. So it matters to him to get reps. He's not getting reps right now. So we have to assume that matters also, so it's just. And same with Trent Williams. If I could interrupt you on that, I will say I asked Jeff Schwartz today, who's a big offensive line guy. And I was like, dude, can Trent get ready in time? He's like, oh, yeah, Joe Thomas told me one time he just needs 9 practices. He's good to go. I was like, all right, if you say so. So he's on the Joe Thomas routine. He's got to get 9 practices, though.
True. Yeah. Well, he'll be off. He'll be off for one game, but he's a beast. I would presume that he can get up to speed soon enough. I mean, and that's the concern is that are these players taking their talents for granted, or are we taking this time for granted? Because word on the street is this is supposed to be a Super Bowl window, and it seems like everyone's waking up at 11 a.m. for a 12 flight. And it's kind of getting a little concerning, you know what I mean? So we'll see.
I mean, as somebody who normally hits security 10 to 11 minutes before boarding, I can't say I totally hate that attitude, but I mean, yeah, it feels like they're trying to scrap it together again. And by week 3, they might be 3-0. And we're like, oh yeah, they have the best players and it's one of the most talented rosters with one of the best coaches in the league. And that's just going to work. But, when the margin for error is so thin, and we saw multiple times last year, it's just so thin. Like, you hate to make it harder on yourself, and it feels like they're making it a little harder on themselves right now.
Yeah, at minimum, they're going to make this every game leading up to the bye a little bit more difficult to sort of gel and build chemistry. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they just show up week 1 and they're dominant and they're the talk of the town and we're back where we left off.
That'd be fun.
I believe if that does happen, there's going to be some contributions on the way there from potentially some rookies that we have drafted this year. Obviously, leading that lineup, it feels like, is Dominic Pooney, 3rd-round pick. Based on what you've seen from these 2 preseason games, based on what you've read, heard about training camp, how are you feeling about this rookie class, and who are the standouts to you?
Well, it's Pooney and Cowing. I think you're right about that. Watching Pooney practice, watching Cowing practice. I know there's been some talk the last few days that like the class is already looking great. I think that's a little premature. To me, the preseason with safeties, I have a hard time. Like Malik Mustafa, maybe may just be safety 4, so he'll play. Let's see it. Obviously, the Ricky Pearsall thing is a non-factor right now. But as has been the case in previous Niner drafts, you skip over the 1st-round pick and you look at the 3rd-round pick or the 5th-round pick or the 4th-round pick, and Pooney's going to start at right guard, not just because there's no competition for him to start at right guard, but because he's been really good. He's been very good. And I mentioned Jeff Schwartz. I had him on the show today, and he did a big 16-minute Pooney breakdown on Tuesday on his Twitter page, and he had glowing things to say about him. So it's off to a really good start for Pooney. That's a great pick. And then Cowing, I think Kyle Shanahan is a little, understandably, I asked him about it a couple days ago, a little slow on I said, hey, is there anything Cowing does that is going to help him overcome some of the things that slow down rookie receivers? And he's like, hey, he's got some catching up to do, because he didn't start practicing till last week. But you just can't deny that he gets on the field and he looks better than all the other. He looks better than and this is not just a Saints game on Sunday thing. This is also a practice thing. He looks better than Ronnie Bell. He looks better than Danny Gray. And he just looks ready to roll. The other thing is, it's not just the game. It's not just playing offense. It's the punt return game is a big deal.
Yes.
Especially because that's a part of Ricky. That was going to be a part of Ricky Pearsall. Ricky Pearsall is going to make the 46-man roster. He's going to return punts. Well, we'll see if he's active week 1. But Jacob Cowing is just as good, I think, in a short window. The Niners had a very windy practice yesterday when it came to the punt return game, and it was Trent Taylor and Cowing and Ronnie Bell and Danny Gray. And Jacob Cowing, you could take those 4 guys and put them in 2 different categories. Cowing and Trent Taylor, Danny Bell, Danny Gray and Ronnie Bell. They're just not as good at it as Jacob Cowing, who's very comfortable on a windy day. He didn't muff a single punt. He looked really good. So that also helps him. He's a 5th-year guy in college, and he caught over 350 balls. Like, he's just played a lot of football. So I understand Shanahan's hesitance with him. He's only practiced a week and a half, but I feel pretty good about him. I think he's going to be able to contribute to them.
Yeah, and I don't know. There's something about the wide receiver room always has such an emphasis because I feel like Kyle Shanahan, I feel like if he had to pick, aside from the quarterbacks, of course, if he had to pick one group that if he could only focus on one in practice, if for some reason only could focus on one, I swear to God, it'd be the wide receivers. If he had to pick one, be obviously A, previously was a wide receiver. B, I think they are so instrumental to what he does. Obviously the offensive line, of course, but they're so instrumental to what he does that whenever a free agent wide receiver was mentioned about the 49ers, I am so preconditioned to be like, all right, well, let's pull up their fucking blocking tape. Like, how are they doing on run plays? But credit to Shanahan, that is why the run plays are so successful, is because someone makes that extra effort that clears just enough space for Christian McCaffrey to get like 20 more yards. And so I think Jacob Cowing, I was at the game, and whenever I looked at Jacob Cowing at running plays, look, he's not the biggest guy, but he was throwing himself into every block as best he could. Like, you could tell he was game. And part of me thinks that he smells blood. Like, I think he looks at this wide receiver room and he says, I think I'm good enough to make it. Like, I'm good enough. He looks at Ronnie Bell. He looks at the other sort of folks in the room, that Gray, and he's just like, this shit is mine.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
He wants to take it, and I honestly think he's got a pretty good chance to be a damn good wide receiver if he obliges to Kyle Shanahan's wish list of things he needs to work on.
Yeah, so I think it's interesting that you said you watched him block, because he's not tall, but he is thick, right? Like, he is, from an NFL body standpoint, he's thick enough, right? He's bigger than Ray McLeod. Yeah, he's at least as thick as, maybe a little shorter, as Willie Snead, who, obviously Kyle has brought around several times. And by the way, like, when you talk about Kyle liking the offensive line, Kyle likes what the offensive line can do. Kyle likes his system, but he does not pour a lot of resources. Trent Williams gets paid. Otherwise, they don't pour a lot of resources into their offensive line. He puts resources into his wide receivers. He puts, he wants, his line coaches matter, and his defensive line, he puts a lot of resources into the players there. But the offensive line, they do not put a lot of resources there. So that's pretty telling, kind of just in terms of how he thinks you need to build a team and where you need to spend your money. But think about Friday night. Ayuk, we know, is not playing. Let's say Jennings is back. Starters are going to play, whatever that means. But let's say it's Jennings and Debo. Who's your third best receiver? Now, you'd say, most people would say Chris Conley, for good reason. And he's the X receiver. Jacob Cowing's not that. But even if you say Cowing is 3, to me, Conley is 3. To me, then Cowing is 4. And I know it's way more premature than I like to be on a week and a half of a player being a pro, going like, oh, okay. But it's just, I think you just have seen it with him. And if you watched him and Ronnie Bell and Danny Gray, and I said, which one's the rookie, you wouldn't pick Cowing. So he's in a great spot. At this point, Ricky Pearsall's not in pads yet from this last injury. So I can't expect him to be dressed in a uniform for them week 1. But as long as Cowing blocks, runs his routes, catches the balls that hit him in the hands, and doesn't muff punts, he's in great shape. If you're the guy who fills that role on this team, you don't have to go catch 7 balls. It's not your job. Your job is to be in the right place at the right time the 4 times we ask you to go do something. And then not muff the punts. That's what we're asking. Just don't lose Kyle's trust or gain it. You probably don't. Kyle's not one of those, like, you have my trust until you lose it type guys with receivers. Right. You got to earn it. But they drafted him in the 4th round. They like him, and I think he's looked really good.
I agree. And I think the punt return game, honestly, we'll get into the matchup against the Raiders. But honestly, the punt return game is going to be a very important watch for that matchup. But while we're kind of on this topic of who's in, who's out potentially, let's talk about our bubble boys. Obviously, we're coming up on roster cuts here pretty soon. I don't know if there's any particular rooms that catch your eye as far as who is in, who is out? For me, obviously, wide receiver is one that stands out. Who do you think makes the cut?
Yeah, I think receiver to me is the most interesting one, and it's hard with the Pearsall situation. So, but let's just say it's Ayuk, Debo, and Jennings. There's three. We're talking about six guys, probably on your 53 and 5 that dress on your 46-man roster. So we just named three. I think Chris Conley's got to be in that mix. He's good on special teams coverage. There's 4. This means they were prepared to go into if you draft a receiver in the first round and the 4th round, you were prepared to make rookies 2 of your 6 roster spots, right? So they were prepared to do that. Now that Cowing looks good, if he keeps it going, then I think he's going to be in that group. I think you had to talk about it 2 different ways. One is with Ricky Pearsall starting the year on IR, and one is without him starting the year on IR. What's to me the more interesting side of that is what happens if he does start the year on IR. Who's the other guy? And that's where it's kind of like, all right, so we said Ayuk, Debo, Jennings 3, Conley 4, Cowing 5. Who's number 6? And that probably just is, I guess, Ronnie Bell or Danny Gray. I mean, Trent Taylor probably clears waivers and goes to practice squad anyway.
Right.
So maybe it's the guy you think that's less likely to clear waivers. But maybe there's another receiver out there that doesn't make somebody else's team, and all of a sudden you're like, we actually have a spot if you
Good point
on Bell and Gray. Now, I would say this: if Pearsall's on IR, even if he's not, it's a tough spot to bring a new guy in unless Kyle already knows him. Just because whoever you bring in, you may actually that guy might be dressing out by week 2. So it's a weird spot to bring somebody in just because you don't have that much. You don't have enough depth. You don't have any depth. You don't have that much depth. So that's the group as I see it right now.
Yeah, the Trent Taylor situation is interesting. I think that's why punt return is going to be an important aspect of the game to watch. Is if Trent Taylor plays out of his mind returning punts, maybe, but it seems like Jacob Cowing already sort of doing what they need him to do. So we'll see.
Yeah, I think Cowing's a better receiver than Trent Taylor. We saw it in the game, right? Just getting open is not his strength. So Trent Taylor has a value in that he is really trustworthy when it comes to punt returns. But if you have somebody else that you can trust, now all of a sudden you can make a different. Now you can make the decision based on the receiver part of it, not the punt return part.
Absolutely. Tight end. Where do you see this going?
Yeah, another really interesting one. Kittle and Eric Saubert, 1 and 2. And then, you put a lot of draft stock into Latu, but Willis appears to be ahead of him. Willis should be ahead of him. I don't know that Willis has been spectacular, but he's also your kind of fullback too, so he's a little more versatile. Latu's just unfortunately not looked like the guy ready for that. So would somebody sign him if you put him on waivers? Maybe. But I think you have to be willing to do that. And then it feels like let's see if Mason Pline plays on Friday night. It may be that he's not playing intentionally, that they're going to need to put him on practice squad. Obviously, he's huge. I thought he's looked promising. He's got some work, but it's a situation where you maybe you don't want to lose him, so you try to get him through to practice squad. But unfortunately, Latu, he's got a lot of chances. It's just not unless they see something. But I don't know. That one doesn't appear to be working.
Yeah. It seems like Braden Willis is probably going to take it on that one, which, again, versatility pays the bills if you're going to be signing up for a Kyle Shanahan cinematic universe. So
yeah, he played in the Super Bowl. I mean, it wasn't great, but he was there. Like that's the guy they chose. Willis was hurt, obviously. Latu was hurt, obviously, but he's already kind of been in some of those spots. So.
And then last position of interest for me, and then you let me know if there's another one that stands out to you. This is a very offensive heavy bubble conversation, but offensive line.
Yeah, I mean, I would say the question there is Jarrett Kingston impressed them enough to surpass Nick Sikel?
And I'm really glad you brought that up. You were doing play-by-play for Pac-12 when he was at USC, correct?
Yeah, I didn't do a game of his at SC. I did do a game of his at Washington State.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
I was just curious if you had any read on him prior to the draft, or if all your information's kind of coming from 49ers on.
I had some draft. I have to go back and check my draft notes of just people I talked to. Let me see if I can find what my Kingston
Insiders.
intel insiders was. You know, Washington State put out some solid offensive line guys over the years, like Abe Lucas. Let's see here. Nothing that I would share. I mean, no.
Yeah, confidential.
No, but not even anything where, I mean, like,
Yeah,
I'm not
it's like,
hiding. Nothing
he
great.
could be good, he could be bad. We'll find out.
It wasn't a great, like the Pooney scouting report I got was very good. That report was not very good.
Really?
Yeah, the Pooney scouting report. I talked to a Kansas coach right after the Niners drafted him, and he was like, "Oh, we love him." He's like, "The only thing is we never asked at Kansas in our offense. We didn't ask offensive linemen to really move the line of scrimmage, quote unquote." And Kyle Shanahan made a comment this week about how it's really hard. Most programs in college football do not ask players to block the way they do in the NFL. But they really liked Pooney. They were optimistic that he could do what the Niners asked. We'll see. We still haven't seen a ton of Pooney kind of road grade offense. We haven't seen a lot of run play. There are a lot of pass plays for him the other day. But yeah, when the Niners drafted him, the Kansas coach I talked to thought it was a really good pick. So.
But yeah, so do you think Jarrett Kingston has shown enough? And do you think that it helps that he's sort of fresh, open for molding, as opposed to maybe some folks who've been on the roster who they've seen the sort of trajectory of their learning curve and may hold that against them?
Maybe. I mean, the only thing I would say is I think when you've got an older player, he was 5 or 6 years of college football, might have been 5. I don't know how much ceiling they feel like is there. But yeah, I mean, if you think if you can, the biggest thing is, can you trust him?
Right.
I think at this point, if you're putting a guy on the roster, it's not because of upside, it's because of trust. Because we've seen how many guys have had to play on this offensive line. First and foremost, you just got to protect Brock Purdy. But if you count it up, Trent Williams, Jalen Moore, Aaron Banks is 3, Pooney is 4, Brendel is 5, Burford is 6, McKivitz is 7, Feliciano's banged up, so I don't know if he's 8. Zakel is 8, then Chris Hubbard, Jarrett Kingston. Let's say you're going to carry 9, I think he's given himself a very good chance. Yes. I mean, again, drafted players have chances because they like you to begin with. So, yeah, I think he's got a good shot.
Yeah, again, we're about to get into it with respect to what I'm looking for in this 49ers versus Raiders matchup, but Jarrett Kingston, I think this is the moment where we start to see. I think Pooney's shown enough. Now I'm curious to look and see is this a mirage or do we really have 2 valuable picks in this draft at offensive line, which would be a huge bonus for us to not have to spend first or second round draft capital to get this job done. So why don't we just go ahead and hop into that to stay on track here? 49ers versus Raiders preview. Obviously, this is not a regular season game, so really when you look at these matchups, they almost seem more focused on the prospects more than it does the team or scheme or result. Who are you watching in this game and presuming that this is going to be a very important showcase for them?
Well, the Raiders, I don't think are really playing their starters, which, whatever. That you still got to look good. So
Correct.
Pooney is still on that list. I think Kingston's on that list. I mean, we talked about him a lot, so I don't. But Cowing is definitely high on that list. What happens at linebacker is D. Winters back this week. You know, I thought he might have a chance to take Devondre Campbell's job, but I don't think that's going to happen. He was a little. I think you want somebody a little more kind of buttoned down than he was in that first preseason game. But if he were to return, I would put D. Winters high on that list. It's not about watching him play this week, but just in the next 2 weeks, you want to see Isaac Yiadom back from his ankle healthy. To me, if he's healthy, it's him and Mooney Ward and Diamador Lenore. That's a really good group of three
Agreed.
cornerbacks. So, I mean, those would be the guys. Like, there's really not a ton of questions if you know that Campbell is your starting linebacker next to Fred Warner. I mean, you know, maybe Renardo Green.
Yep.
But he'll have time this year, so he doesn't need to answer any questions this week. You know, at safety, no one needs to. Malik Mustafa, we're continuing to watch, but he's making the team. So, you know, I think that's the group. I think it's the guys we already talked about. That I mean, it's like, sorry, let me watch the receiver. I want to watch Cowing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's
I guess the backup. I didn't mention the backup quarterback either.
right. That's actually going to be one of the. I mean, the good news is there's no quarterback controversy this year, which we just found another way to have a controversy at a wide receiver room. But it is interesting to watch this Brandon Allen, Josh Dobbs competition. There's just something about there is a certain Brandon Allen has this kind of very disciplined poise that doesn't wow you. It just, you know, he's just doing his best to effectively execute the Shanahan offense, which is fine. But there's a certain je ne sais quoi about Joshua Dobbs. Like, obviously, maybe by je ne sais quoi, I just mean I love when he fucking runs. But there just seems to be a little bit of extra something when I'm watching him versus Brandon Allen. So that certainly is something I'm going to be watching with this Raiders matchup. I also think that Cameron Latu, I kind of really feel like this is the last game we may see Cameron Latu. I mean, again, he could go in practice squad. It just depends on how they really feel about him. But if he is going to want to make a case for himself, and frankly, in a room that I think there's not a lot of people standing out, really. I mean, you've obviously got your starter, Saubert, as backup, I guess, but like,
Yeah.
I think there is, if a dog wants to step up and take it, they could, so long as they've built enough during the training camp sessions that the possibility exists inside of Shanahan's mind that, okay, maybe they've stepped up to the plate. I will also say Jarrett Kingston, like we talked about earlier, is going to be interesting to watch. And what's up with this new fucking punter, man? He's kind of fire. Do we have a special teams crisis on our hands?
Yeah.
Put that on the list of things to watch on Friday night.
Absolutely.
Because, you know, Wisnowski's got a achy knee. If I had a knee that bugged me for 2 weeks, and they're like, you know, guy, just take it. Like that would alarm me. So I don't know how alarmed they are, but I'd be a little alarmed. So, I mean, put that on the list. Put Latu on the list. I will say, I don't think there's nobody in this group that can take Eric Saubert's job.
Sure.
He's been so clearly number two. And, you know, what they need from their second tight end is kind of what you described as they don't need any je ne sais quoi from their number two tight end.
Blocking, brother.
Yeah, they need PB and J.
Sir.
Yep. 100%.
By the way, for anybody going to Lisbon, there's a very good restaurant called Je ne sais quoi.
I've been to actually, funny story about Lisbon. I was in Lisbon literally when the lockdowns from COVID happened. I thought I was going to have to live there. Yeah, it was trippy. I was in a restaurant and saw like the police kind of come in and be like, "Hey, y'all can't really have people eat inside anymore." It was crazy.
What restaurant?
It was right in the Timeout Square.
Yeah.
There's a restaurant around the corner. If I went on Google Maps and
is it the steak place?
No,
Salad Court.
It was right. It was kind of like in like if you gotta go into like the alleys of Timeout Court, it was one of those kind of side restaurants. But love Lisbon. It's the shit. But I just kind of got a different perspective of it because it was basically closed down.
You could have stayed and just dominated the Lisbon real estate market like other Americans did.
Brother, if I had only known.
Yes, sir.
But next time I'm going to Je ne sais quoi for sure.
And also go to Je ne sais quoi Asia, which is down the street.
Oh, wait, there's two?
There's two, yeah.
Whoa, good to know. Good to know. Punter Crisis I can get behind, says Haywire. Hello to beautiful people, says Zachary Greer. And a second person inquiring about the punter controversy. I honestly think there's more legs to this than people think. When I was, because I was at the game, and the funny thing, if there's one position,
seats?
They were good, brother. I got them for free. They were like Club 100 section. Shout out to I don't know if he wants me to out his name or not, but shout out to one of my followers who gifted me those preseason club seats. You're the fucking man.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
In person's
Yes,
a good
sir.
way to watch the punters. You got to watch the punters in person.
I was just
keep
about
going.
to say that. It's a whole different perspective because on TV you don't get the perspective of how that ball is twisting and turning and etc. And apparently Wisniewski's got some, he's got a deep bag, I guess, of ways he can get funky with the ball. But I'll tell you, man, every time we line up to punt, I'd be in the middle of talking to someone and I would stop and look at that punt drop and then be like, okay, I guess we got a little controversy on
the whole
my hand.
stadium got quiet for the punt drop.
Yeah, it got to the point where it was the main show. I started liking it. Well, maybe that's a perfect time to get to our very, very last segment here, cutting to the end. I don't know if you've seen this, but let me get rid of this comment real quick. But I do a little show. Oh, we got one. I'm sorry. I think I'm behind on the show. My bad. Don't worry about it, Papa J. You're here for the best part, which is called affirmations. Okay. So affirmations is where we say some nice things, maybe some encouraging words to some players. This is an important time to do it because we have some players who might be getting cut. This might be their last chance. And as I always like to remind my viewers, be sensitive around this time because these players have dedicated their life to this sport. And it's not very good on their heart and soul if and when they get cut. So with that being said,
So this is sincere?
100%.
That's good.
So if there's, it doesn't even have to be players or coaches. It could just be, like an announcer. Like if Joe Buck had if Joe Buck had a tummy ache, you could just show him some love.
An announcer, yeah.
I'm going to start with Mitch Wisniewski. Hey, buddy, I want you to know that you're still my punter in my eyes. True story. The Sourdeath Sam account, when it first started, was actually a Mitch Wisniewski fan account. And then I was like, this is kind of dumb. I need to pivot. But it was not dumb because of you. It was just dumb because I wasn't just trying to be a carbon copy of someone else's image. So I appreciate you. And I hope you heal up soon. And I know you're incredibly talented. And no matter what happens, I bet you're going to be just fine. All right. Your turn.
During the Niner game on Sunday, I posted a video of Dominic Pooney making a really athletic move. He spun, had no one to block, and he turned back and helped Colton McKivitz. And it got a lot of views. And when I checked it later, a lot of the people were not complimenting Pooney. They were talking shit about McKivitz, which was unfortunate because the reason he got beat on the play was Pooney stepped on his foot. So he didn't deserve that. I didn't post it for any other reason than look at what Pooney did. But Colton, I know that Puni stepped on your foot, and that wasn't your fault. And if you're good enough for Brock, which clearly you are, then you should be good enough for everybody else. How's
Hell
that?
yeah.
Yes, sir.
That was really good.
Yes,
That was really good.
sir.
Because that is a nuance that a lot of people didn't know unless they sort of dug deeper, read the article. Which, Twitter, they never do that.
I don't do it.
I'm 50-50. Depends on how important the topic is.
I paste it into AI and say, summarize this.
Yeah. Hey, Chat GPT, what's going on, brother? Let me know
Claude
what's
is
going on.
actually my preferred AI.
Oh, okay. Fancy
Yes,
ass.
sir.
All right.
Yes, sir.
Let's go. I'll go. Jared Kingston. It's not easy for a rookie to catch our eye on a team so talented. I can tell that there is talent within you that is trying to emerge, that's trying to build on this confidence. And I want you to just show your best self against the Raiders, because this could be a huge opportunity for you. And it's all about making sure you are undeniable in your performance and show everyone what you're about, so that Guy Haberman can retweet awesome plays that you've done. All right, then you probably one more. How many you've done? 1, 2? I like to do
I've done
three.
one.
Oh, we get 3, baby. Go.
Oh, okay. Wish I'd thought of this ahead of time.
Well, essentially we're on a show.
I know. I don't. If you'd worked with me before, you would know.
You sent it to Claude, and you're like, all right, what is he doing here?
If you'd worked with me before, like other producers, you'd know I don't read that. Yeah, I'm gonna give one to Ricky. This is for Ricky Pearsall, man.
Ooh, I like that. Good.
It probably really sucks to work your whole life. You're patient. You're grinding. You go to Arizona State. You're kind of balling. You go to Florida State. The team's not great, but you're balling. Or Florida, sorry.
I was about to say.
My bad. They were balling. You get drafted in the first round. Half the fan base is like, I don't know, overdraft. But Guy likes you. Let the record show. I like the pick. And you're just like doing everything right. You're in fantastic shape. You're working out with the quarterback. You're working out with other receivers. You're doing it all right. And you get hurt. And then you come back and you're hurt. And then you get hurt again. It's got to really suck to be patient in your rookie year. But what choice do we have? We'll wait for you, Ricky. I'm willing to wait for you.
Yes, sir.
That's so real. That's a great one. Because you're so right. And he does. One of the biggest traits about him coming out was like, this guy blocks. And I was like, oof, that is going to be huge. So we'll see. I think the best of Ricky is yet to come. And I think that if anything, it just opened up the door for Jacob Cowing to be like, hey, I'm also a dog. So clock that. I'm going to say.
Somebody didn't read the rundown.
I know. Well, I'm looking at the roster here, trying to see who needs a little love. I'm gonna say Trent Williams. I hope you had a great vacation, and I am excited for you to come back. I think people are underestimating how bad we would miss you if this was really getting real. So I hope that you find the peace that you need to return back home to us, because without you, I cannot imagine us reaching the heights that I believe we are, or would hope we are destined to achieve. So Trent Williams, I hope you get everything you need out of this Joe Thomas schedule of training camp, and I can't wait to see it.
Let the record show that by peace, Sam means $35 million a year.
Yes, sir.
35 milli.
Guaranteed. I'd like to send a message to Raider Nation.
Ooh.
had a complicated but loving, not really that complicated, respectful, me personally, relationship with Raider Nation. I have, much like you, Sourdeath Sam, some would say, play a character. I have a character. I'm not saying you do. I just some would say Sourdeath Sam is not who you are in the streets. I'm not saying that, but some would say that. That's not your government name. Some would say. I'm not saying that.
You haven't seen my driver's license.
Raider Guy is another person that sometimes tweets from my account, does appear on my show, posts in my YouTube comments. And what's funny about it is it's something I've done for a long time, just sparingly. There are plenty of people who don't know what it is and will talk shit to me as if I am a hardcore Raider believer. But I do it out of love for the years and years of mistreatment that Raider fans have suffered at the hands of their own organization. I've been to a lot of games when I was working in radio. Not every Sunday, but often I spent a lot of time at the Coliseum. I've made a lot of friends that are Raider fans. Met a guy today at Berkeley Bowl, decked head to toe in Raider gear with a pin. He said, "Big game Friday night." I said, "Yeah, it is." I didn't mean it, but I knew it meant a lot to Raider fans. So to Raider fans, I kid, I joke, I poke, but it is done with love. For me, I don't know about Sam, but for me, it's all love.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I feel like all my ribbing is usually out of love.
I have a feeling it probably is.
I'm like a pretty docile shit poster. I feel like I'm not, I'm not up to too much no good.
I really think, Sam, if I can call you that, the internet, most of the stuff that gets people angry on the internet is, now I know we could have a deep conversation about this, but a lot of it, maybe not most of it, is just taken the wrong way.
Yeah.
A lot of it is legitimately really shitty, don't get me wrong. But I think people like to talk to each other like they talk to their boys, but then they receive it very differently.
Yes. Certainly. I think there's certainly dish it can't take it phenomena on social media networks. It's usually why I don't try to ever I don't try to like shock post in ways that I feel like would be that I don't think I could handle it if someone threw it at me.
That's nice.
Especially with players, like, and it's especially with players, like, as much as it's fun to kind of, try to bend the format, for example, of like what this is and etc. I think it's also important to be really cognizant that, because I've worked around enough of these athletes to know, like, these are real people, man. Like, when they get cut, it's not just a punchline for your tweet. It's like they've got a lot of family logistics they've got to figure out. This could be the end of the line for them. And a lot of people don't know that there is a huge mental there's a high level of difficulty when it comes to absorbing life post an athlete's career. And I always try to be respectful, because I understand that when an athlete is done playing the sport that they've been playing since basically they came out of the womb, it's really hard for them to compartmentalize, like, how to re-exist.
Could I say something without taking up too much time?
Yeah,
it was a great point. I would say a couple things. I learned this when I was doing the Oakland A's pre and post game show on radio, and I'd done minor league baseball before, and I knew that I was on the radio calling the game, but I'd be down at the batting cage the next day, and someone would say to me, my mom, like, the only people listening to minor league baseball are the players' families for the most part. Mm-hmm. So, like, you don't get away with anything. And that was always a lesson. It's like, I will say whatever I'm comfortable defending the next day when I walk down into the clubhouse. Like, I will be there. So you want to call and rip somebody, like, I will say as much as I'm comfortable defending the next day when I have to go down there. And it's a great barometer. It's like, am I comfortable defending this the next day when I go into the locker room? If I am, then, and there's things that bother people that's legitimate. You got to do the job. But that's always kind of been I think the barometer.
And I think it's a good lesson to end with, which is basically post as if it's going to be blown up in a courtroom.
Say it to my face.
Yeah, say it to my face.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Oh, man. Guy, I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate you being such a good sport. You have long been a voice that I've had in my ears without the privilege of talking back. And hopefully I have not offended you in any way. I promise I can defend everything I said because everything I said was, I hope, complimentary to you. So I'm incredibly grateful for you hopping on. This is my last affirmation.
Okay. Thanks, Sam. Good to be here. Obviously, watch what you do. It's different. It's cool. I appreciate that. And so I'm glad you invited me. Thank you.
Absolutely. All right, guys. Guy Haberman. All right, Guy, I'm going to sign off, but I'll let you off the hook here. Appreciate you for coming. All right, guys, we did it. Another fucking preseason game. Done. Another episode of 49ers Public Access. Done. But we got roster cuts, and we've got an IU contract allegedly going to be settled soon. So I assure you, next week, we are going to get this popping. It is going to be electric. And I am looking forward to sharing this time with you 7 days from now to talk about our first regular season game, Monday Night Football versus the New York Jets.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thanks for coming. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. I'll see you soon.